thrives on alternation, not linearity, not doing the same thing all the time. So you don't need 20 pills or seven different prescriptions. You need this periodic recalibration. Healthspan has made the commitment to going beyond molecules, and it's fun to see you guys building this model that includes assessments and education and synchronized stacks and supplements and not just trying to sell stuff. And that really opens the door.
All right, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Beyond Healthspan. This is Shriya from the Healthspan Clinical Team, and today I'm joined by Dr. Rick Cohen. Dr. Cohen is one of our advising physicians, and he is the formulator behind the Cellular Renewal Stack, which is our newest supplement protocol. So in this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the scientific foundation behind the approach, how pathways like autophagy and AMPK function, why they need to be cycled, and importantly, we're going to go over how this protocol was designed from the ground up. So whether you're new to longevity interventions or you're exploring some new tools like rapamycin or SGLT2 inhibitors, this is really a deep dive into why timing is so important and just as important as the compounds themselves. So let us get into it, Dr. Cohen. From our many conversations, one of the recurring themes is your view of mitochondrial function being at the root of aging. Could you talk a little bit about your perspective and what's happening at the cellular level when we age?
Yeah, totally. It's a really key point. We get discussed and we're told aging is damage, damage. But it's really more than that. It's how the systems of the body are working together. And like a symphony that is a little bit off, right? So that's and that adds a symphony becomes off when the violin goes off, the tuba goes off, and so forth. Within this symphony of our body are the mitochondria, and they really sit at the center of everything. And we were taught and we're still educated that mitochondria are the little energy factories, and they are, but they're really so much more than that. They're an interconnected network, a collective intelligence that actually is within each cell. And these mitochondria coordinate signaling, repair, redox, the way the body handles calcium, and even gene expression. So, what we call energy is really more of this structured flow. And when that flow becomes chaotic or fragmented, the mitochondria lose coherence. The symphony goes off key. The singer loses the vibe. And that is what we understand more and more is what aging, inflammation, and dysfunction are. There's a wonderful researcher that come friendly when his name is Martin Picard. He's a PhD at Columbia. And please look his work up. It's incredibly important here. He's actually shown that mitochondria can act as social beings, that they fuse, they come together, they communicate, they adapt to stress, and even like influence each other's behavior. They can actually go from one part of the body to the other. They know when someone needs help or when the mitochondria need help. So they form this sort of energetic field and they communicate through, I'll throw out a term called quantum in a non biochemical way. And it's the health of this field that actually determines how the tissue or a person responds to stress and regenerate. So when we target a protocol, the real focus is to renew the coherence of this network through cycles of clearing and activation. And we could go really deep in that, but I wanted to lead off with the understanding of where knowledge is heading today. So mitochondria, yes, produce energy. Just like a battery, you need energy for life, but they're way more than that. And that's super exciting for a mitochondriac such as myself and more physicians and academics as they're seeing this are incredulous. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really awesome.
So I know one of the things that this specific stack is looking at is this concept of autophagy. So could you talk a little bit about what autophagy is, what triggers it, and just give us a little insight there?
Sure. So autophagy, right? Self-eating. So that's what it is. And it's the cell's own recycling system. We have a way to clean out the junk. So any damaged proteins or mitochondria that have lost their charge or and waste products of production. So it's triggered by energy scarcity. So fasting, exercise, nutrient sensing molecules. But as we age, autophagy becomes less efficient. The signals that trigger this get dull and the body doesn't clean up quite as well, right? It's like the old guy on the couch, he doesn't take the trash out. And so we carry these metabolic waste, and as the cells and the body carries more metabolic waste, it's a problem. So what we want to do is to periodically reawaken that signal in a controlled, powerful way. So periodically do a good cleaning. That's the simple idea behind autophagy.
Okay, so autophagy, like the built-in recycling system. Now, that was
Yes.
pathways that your stack targeted. The other one that was talked about was AMPK. Could you talk a little bit about AMPK?
Got it. So AMPK is one of the signals that can trigger autophagy, and maybe we can think of AMPK as a cellular fuel gauge. So when energy is low, such as when you're fasting, it activates it, and the body shifts from we're going to store right into an energy generating mode. So this is really important for metabolic health, blood sugar regulation, and burning fat or fat oxidation, but it's not a pathway that we want to leave on indefinitely, right? Chronic activation of this, if you keep breaking down and keep removing, leads to poor energy, fatigue, and we'll call it catabolism. That's where body breaks down. So timing is really important, and not only timing, but duration.
All right, so something that you want to activate, but not activate all the time.
You can't fast for 3 months and expect to doing a lot of autophagy. That wouldn't be good.
Yep. And now there's this pathway called mTOR, and we talk about mTOR a lot here. How does mTOR fit into this picture?
Got it. So mTOR and AMPK are like a seesaw, right? So mTOR is the growth master switch. So like we said, AMPK is the cleaning, the repair, the recovery switch. mTOR is growth. When the body has lots of nutrients, mTOR promotes growth, repair, and muscle building. So who do you think mTOR is really high in? Kids. So in your teens, mTOR is sky high. But the problem is if mTOR is left on all the time and it's chronically high from constant feeding or stress, what happens is you don't go into autophagy because AMPK never has the opportunity to cycle in. And then you don't clean out house and you develop all the age related dysfunctions that we see in today's world. But on the other side, we need mTOR. We need to build. So over suppressing mTOR, like overdosing of rapamycin or chronic levels of high dosing of rapamycin in combination with something else, fasting, AMPK stimulators, et cetera, can impair the immune system or actually impair tissue regeneration. So the key here, and this is like the really important point as we started out, is cycling. It's alternate grow, right? Growth, cleanup, growth, cleanup, like the seasons. And if you look back at how we evolved, right? We had summer when food was abundant, light, fruit, activity. That was a time of abundance. And then you had winter, which was a time of scarcity. So we had darkness, you slept, you stayed inside, you got cold. So that was a time of cleansing and repair. And we had this cycle. We don't have that anymore. You can eat all winter, right? You can eat all winter and stay inside and be warm and not challenge the body. And then people will think, oh, wait, in summer I need to get fast and get thin because I need to look good at the beach. Now we're backwards, and that's not good for the body.
So what I'm getting is we don't want to do the chronic inhibition or chronic activation, depending on whether we're looking at mTOR or AMPK. But what's the solution? How do we do that in our modern lifestyle?
Right. Yeah. So it's the cycling, mimicking nature, right? Our cells evolved in this feast or famine, rest, exertion, light, dark cycles. The body thrives on alternation, not linearity, not doing the same thing all the time. So that was the idea behind the renewal stack is to mirror that a few days of autophagy followed by a shift to AMPK. and then a reset. It's like a wave, right? It's a pattern. It comes in and it goes out. It comes in and it goes out. And now you're creating this resilience and a coherence for the body. You're signaling the body to do what it already knows. We don't have to rely on external. We just need to remind the body what it's been programmed to do.
It makes me think a little bit of circadian rhythms when you explain that cycling. Is this related to that concept?
Oh, absolutely. Perfectly. So fasting, sleep, and exercise already do this,
Mhm.
but most people don't do them consistently. They don't do them in the correct order. They don't do them according to their own particular needs. So by using these blends, we can enhance and mimic those rhythms in a molecular way, in a botanical way. You can almost think as a botanical fast, but with mitochondrial signaling as the core focus. And that's the idea, is it's all about signaling these little sentient beings that have taken harbor in our body and get them to work together in a powerful way.
Gotcha. And then how does hormesis play a role? I know that this is something that when you were formulating this product, you were thinking about hormesis. What role does that play here?
Got it. So hormesis is, I guess we need to explain that, right? Hormesis is when a little bit of something creates a challenge to the body, but you actually recover stronger. So that's, you want to think about that. The stress, whether it's a physical stress, a psychological stress, a fasting stress, a cold stress, a heat stress. So we have this stress and it's followed by a recovery. Autophagy is a hormetic response. So as we said, AMPK is that fuel signal that says, hey, you don't have enough energy. So without this pause, you don't get breakdown. And without that breakdown, you don't get resilience. That's why each component, not only of the supplement stack of lifestyle, should have a rhythm and it has an arc. You want to challenge the system, then let it rebound. And that's really a key concept to take in is, and I'll use a simple awareness that we forget. We think that exercise, by doing more of that exercise, we're doing better. Yeah, but the exercise is causing a challenge to the body. So if you exercise every day and you never let the body recover, you're never triggering that hormetic response. A lot of people will do much better actually reducing the physical activity and giving more attention to recovery because that's where the magic is.
Yeah. So that is what the cellular renewal stack is built around this concept. Now, I got my cellular renewal stack and it comes in two different bottles. And unlike a lot of supplements, what I'm gathering is I don't take this every day. This is something that is rotated. How does that work? I know this is a bit more complex in the dosing than a standard supplement would be.
Yeah. So just like you said, as we were talking about, it's designed in phases to be taken across a week or 10-day cycles. It was meant to either be taken alone or actually to complement rapamycin or an SGLT2, primarily initially rapamycin, because rapamycin has that particular mTOR effect. So does metformin has its particular AMPK effect. So it was a way to synergize and enhance and potentially even lessen the need or the dosing of the pharmaceutical and or lessen the potential non-targeted effect, right? An unwanted effect of those molecules. So the idea is to take these in this sequence with the autophagy blend coming first, and the autophagy blend primes that cleanup, right? Primes the renewal phase, and then comes AMPK, which we're shifting to energy generation, burning fat, and improving metabolism. Like pruning your tree and then fertilizing your internal landscape. So you're getting this sequence, and then you take a break and you can start up again. And this is all done over a 4 to 6 week cycle, a 4 to 8 week cycle, take a little break, start up again.
Yeah. And I see that each of these blends is a multi-compound blend. And I know you put a lot of time into picking exactly which compounds would go into each of those. Could you talk a little bit about how you selected what went into each?
Yeah, totally. It was actually quite rewarding. I've been involved in botanicals for a number of years and nutritional formulations. And honestly, a lot of times, and I applaud Healthspan, right? A lot of times it's like you can't spend more than $7 or $5. This behind the scenes of supplements, right? Typical supplements have marketing companies 8 to 10 to 1 markup on products. So that was not the message I received. It's great, something that works, right? We're not worried about marketing because this is a product that we want to include as part of our program. We want to give this as a tool for people so we don't have to pay attention to these large markups because we have a large marketing budget or we have to pay affiliates. So I was actually able to formulate this as a systems architect. I kept that mitochondrial lens, this AMPK autophagy blend combination in mind. And I didn't just pick things that were like, oh, this is cool, this is hot, right? Oh, this is what people want. It was really finding high quality products that work together. And the goal was to synergize them. And the goal was also to simplify it for people as well. So that was the hierarchy. And then it was just putting these together and looking at the research that would, you know, finding dosing that would benefit most people. And then the idea is to start at a particular level, and then each person could adjust based on their own individual needs.
So let's dive into each of these two blends. We have the AMPK, we have the autophagy. Each of them is, from my understanding, a multi-compound blend. So rather than just one supplement, it's got a mix of different things in there. And one of the ingredients that stood out to me in this AMPK blend was dihydroberberine, particularly because it's something we've been recommending to our patients for some time now. So it was exciting to see it in here with a bunch of other ingredients. Was that what brought you to include dihydroberberine here?
Absolutely. And it's something it's a highly bioavailable AMPK activator. It's stronger and better tolerated and better absorbed than berberine alone. And it has a very powerful effect on metabolic flexibility and glucose modulation. Before we formulated this, I was aware of that. And we did some in-house recommendations when we saw people who were at risk of metabolic issues or were having some metabolic disturbance from unwanted effects of rapamycin. And I believe like 95% of the people had a positive response. So that motivated us to say, okay, how can we take this cool polyphenol, which has a number of other benefits, and enhance upon it? And that was the idea behind the formula is a wide spectrum of natural based polyphenols from ginger, curcumin, silymarin, which is milk thistle, green tea, grapeseed, right? They all have different colors. And all these different colors of these polyphenols, which are the plant's natural protective mechanisms. And they're rich in these biochemicals that have this particular action or a variety of particular actions on the body. But the cool thing is we're not focusing on one synthetic. We're using this natural blend to trigger this response in a way that the body recognizes it because plants have messages, right? There's an energy that's different from a synthetic molecule. So that's the AMPK blend, and I really like it. It's a
Cool.
cool, yeah.
And then the autophagy blend. The autophagy blend, the way I'm envisioning it, doing something similar to a rapamycin. And there were a bunch of ingredients in here. So I guess the question is this something that is different than rapamycin?
Yeah, it's a fasting mimetic PEA, palmito oleoethanolamide. How about that? And oleoethanolamide are these cool molecules that modulate inflammation. PEA is actually great if anyone has pain. You might find when you take this that this chronic pain moves away. We use PEA topically on injuries, and it can work really well. OEA helps with fatty acid oxidation. Spermidine is people probably heard about as an autophagy polyamine, which sort of helps with cleanup and regeneration. And then threw in quercetin as well, this unique, which could have been in the AMPK as well, but it had a crossover adding those with these two unique molecules, astaxanthin, which is a fat-soluble antioxidant, and then L-ergothioneine, which is a rare mitochondrial protector. The mitochondria are susceptible in this energy production to damage. So L-ergothioneine, which is a mushroom extract, and you can read about it in and of itself. You don't see that very often. Adding the astaxanthin and the L-ergothioneine was exciting for me to, it was a bonus. It really didn't absolutely need to be in there, but it rounded off the formula where we had the AMPK option, we had the autophagy option, and we were throwing in periodic dosing of this mitochondrial protector. And that's the way to do it. Cycle it on and off.
Cool. I've seen a lot of studies about astaxanthin recently. I feel like that's something that's getting a lot more traction, but this L-arginine I hadn't heard of, so I am excited to try that. So,
Yeah.
with all of these, what was your general idea? Is this meant to be a fasting replacement? Is it meant to mimic exercise, or are you envisioning that folks are going to pair these with their existing lifestyle choices?
Yeah, I think it's a pairing, it's an enhancement, it's less stressful. It's just they're a new tool. And if you view them, and I think that's the message for people is if you focus on the mitochondria, focus on this is the most important thing that you want for energy and this coherence, then you can start to reframe everything and not just say, I'm going to take this particular substance. I heard of one study in a rat or some podcast influencer talking about it. That's just some random pathway that someone lived 2 weeks longer. It's like that's just random. Have a purpose, have a focus, and have a targeted way to assess things. So that's the real key thing. These are complementary. They could be for people using rapamycin weekly, providing an in-between structure to optimize the outcome and also minimize some of the mTOR 2 side effects. It also could be, I'm not quite ready for rapamycin. Let me start with these and I'll work with some coaching and figure out what's best for my body at this point. And if I'm stuck and when I'm ready, I can bring in a molecule. Maybe you don't even need it. And that's the key. The more tools you have in your box, the more options you have. And we don't need to use every tool in our box. And yeah, for some reason in the supplement world, we think we need everything, right? If you have a screw, you need a screwdriver, right? You don't need your hammer, your screwdriver, your drill, your sander to screw or hit a nail into the wall. So figure out what's needed and then use that. That's not what we're messaged. That's not, we're overwhelmed with information and it can get confusing. It can get overwhelming for me. And this is what I do.
So I want to dive into the rapamycin piece a bit because I think that can even get confusing when you're trying to pair the medication with the supplement. Now, if I take my rapamycin every Monday morning, how would I add this supplement stack to what I'm already doing?
So you could start with rapamycin, and then depending if every Monday morning, you could take the AMPK for a few days, and then about midway through, switch off to the autophagy. So now you're working in this rhythm and you're getting the benefit of all these nutrients as we talked about as a wave. And this way you're running through, I think we designed it a bottle of each per month. And the idea is you're remembering because, okay, I'm not just taking this unconsciously, you're taking this with a purpose. And that was one of the ideas. The easy thing was just here, take a bunch of stuff. When I developed in my conscience and what's right is, to give people what's going to be most meaningful. And it also allows people to adjust, right? They find I'm having a little bit more issue with this, or I have a little bit more challenge with fat loss, then maybe I pump up the AMPK and but I can get away with less rapamycin this way because if I hit 4 milligrams or eight, whatever it might be, I start to get some side effects. So I'm good at 3 milligrams, and now I add in the AMPK and I'm fine. I'm not seeing any metabolic disturbance. I take that for the first part of it, and now I go do a little mini molecular fast with the autophagy, and we're clearing things out, and then you get to start again. So you're enhancing that effect of rapamycin, but you're doing it in a slightly different way without any potential negative effects from it.
Gotcha. And with rapamycin, I know there's a lot of, there's some folks who say pause, there's some folks who say keep going. For something like this, is this something that we would want patients to take a break from, or is this like you take it consistently for the rest of your life?
I'm honestly more in favor of the rapamycin pause per se, because it's more of a seasonal. It's definitely a more higher powered. If anything, people could do more rapamycin in winter when you want to be, as we talked about, a little bit more clearing and a little bit more catabolic. You want to trigger that autophagy and take less in the summer. So, in my viewpoint, using the molecules, the pharmaceutical molecules, more pulse because they're stronger, but then feeling comfortable because we're also cycling these botanicals that you can stick with them. It's a softer approach. So there's less of an issue, and you're not taking either one all the time. So I do not see any real reason to stop these.
Yeah.
And ideally, other than foundational nutrients, when I work with people, foundational mineral nutrients, these become one of the more important, in my mind, important tools in your supplement stack. And you can pare things way down
Yeah.
for yourself.
Makes sense. So we talked about the folks that are going to pair this with their existing protocols, but as with anything, we're going to have folks that are starting with us new. This will be their kind of first entrance into this health span world. What is a good way to enter this supplement stack? How should they go about beginning this process?
Yeah, like anything, I think evaluate, and this is something where Healthspan and the coaching team can help you with, is figure out where you are now. And a lot of when I work with people, one of the more powerful things is like clear things out. Let's simplify your life and scale back really unnecessary things. So unless it's super meaningful, we can always add them back in. But so make sure you're not taking extra things that you just got added on, like the text code over the years, and you don't even remember why you started them. And then the next thing was add in these, whether it's the molecule, the pharmaceutical molecule, or the AMP autophagy. Start with, if you're sensitive, start with half a dose of each, and you shouldn't have a problem with it. And take that for the first week or two, if you're cycling it that way, and then work your way up. There's no rush, right? Observe how your body responds it. Let See if you've noticed the rhythms, and ideally find something to track over time, right? You for this and whatever you're taking. How's your energy, right? How's your sleep? How are you adapting to these new molecules? This isn't a hope, and there are other ways to actually assess this as well, and we can talk about that if we want.
Yeah, let's do that. So we do have some of our power users, right? So they want to track things. And I think as the coaches here at Healthspan, everyone likes to have some type of just measurement, some way to track, is this working for me? What would you recommend folks track?
Yeah, so the more common thing obviously is blood patterns. So there are certain markers that we've put together at Healthspan that are really helpful, when you start to see how they work together. And they're an indicator of where you are and where you're going. And when you look at them as a rhythm, how they're working together, you can start to see not only where someone is, but where they're going. And that's really important. The problem with the blood is it's every 3 or 4 months, it's slow. So it's hard to get a sense of, am I moving things? And honestly, that's only one piece of your health. So as I said, it's paying attention to your energy, right? Even simple things. We have a subjective survey of wellness, right? So what are the things that are troubling you? What's your mood been? What's your energy? Is your sleep been consistent? Do you have a pain that's going away? Actually, paying attention to that, because I find that people tend to forget. I was like, oh, wait, I used to have that ache in my elbow, and hold on, it's gone. Or that tennis elbow went away. It just was a random thing because it comes and goes, but you started this and it went away. So that's important. And then there are other things that I look at when I work with people is, what the autonomic nervous system is doing, which is a sign of the stress that the body is experiencing, which is a marker of how well the mitochondria are producing energy in that coherence. And there's things such as heart rate variability that's useful. There's some simple things I'll do with people is like, how long can you hold your breath? And it's an interesting response, but that's a sign of how efficient your body is at modulating carbon dioxide, which is a waste product of mitochondrial respiration. When you have a better adaptation to that, you can hold your breath longer, that's showing the mitochondria are more efficient. If you have some type of performance metric, a cyclist might notice that, hey, wait, my heart rate used to be 140 beats per minute to do 175 watts. And now at 140 beats per minute, I do 185 watts. That's a big difference. Or at 170, 150 watts, my heart rate is lower. So things like that, with whatever is useful, blood pressure changes are important. And then there's a simple test as well to look at the autonomic nervous system is I'll have people do, and it's a sign of resilience, which is key, is if you check your pulse in the morning in bed, right before you get up, ideally if you have to go to the bathroom, come back into bed for a minute or two, check your resting pulse for 10 seconds, and then stand up, and then wait 1 minute and check your resting pulse again. A very fit, resilient person, let's say their resting pulse is 55. When your body is in a state of readiness, your pulse should not be any more than 10 beats a minute higher. So if you start at 55, you shouldn't be higher than 65 after that minute. If you didn't sleep well, if you've been under stress and or you're taking something that's causing a disturbance or incoherence, you might start at 55, but you find you're at 80 after a minute. That's a no-go, right? So it could be just a day's variation, but if that you started something and all of a sudden that shifts, that's a warning sign that something's up. And it could be short term and it could find its way back down. But these are things that you can listen to your body about, which are quite fun. And you don't rely on devices, rely on yourself.
I like the heart rate check. I feel like I have to go take a midday nap now to see what happens. That's very exciting. I'm like,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I have my little watch that tells me, so that'll be a fun one to track. All right. I learned a lot about both of these supplement stacks today. Thank you, Dr. Cohen, for taking the time to talk about them. I want to give you a chance. Is there anything else that you want to share with our patients?
Yeah, a couple things. One more thing, I just want to point out is people try to do anabolic and catabolic programs at the same time. So really be aware that of this cycling. You can't just take testosterone, train hard, and fast at the same time, and then take rapamycin and metformin. Not only are those not synergistic, it's like you're pushing and pulling at the same time. It just doesn't work. The body gets conflicting messages. What should I do? Our systems are designed to be rhythmic. So it's really important. More is not better. More is actually more noise. And that sort of amplifies why this stack was to simplify and synchronize. You don't need 20 pills or 7 different prescriptions. You need this periodic recalibration. And yeah, and then I think lastly is I am very excited and grateful that Healthspan has made the commitment to going beyond molecules. And it's fun to see you guys building this model that includes assessments and education and synchronized stacks and supplements and not just trying to sell stuff. And that really opens the door for people to apply protocols in a meaningful, personalized way. And the cellular stack is really just an example of this larger vision where there's timing, feedback, and these mitochondrial rhythms have a center stage. So people can understand to work with their biology and rely on their own health and not some external source. And that's super to see Healthspan going this direction and integrating the more conventional science literature with the more important, really more important, the practical tools. Because a paper and such can say one thing, but it doesn't mean anything to the person. Those are just the knowledge that you build upon. So we have practical tools and coaching which can empower people. And that's really exciting to be a part of. And I look forward to continuing to bring this depth and structure to what we're building together.
And I'm excited to see what comes next because I know that this is
Yeah,
just the start. We are just scratching the surface.
absolutely.
So, my key takeaway from today, a couple ones, I just want to make sure I got it all right. So, cycling is really important. You don't want to be doing this catabolic action, anabolic action at the same time. You want to kind of cycle. That's how the human body was meant to be. Now, I actually put together a little dosing chart for myself with the rapamycin and the stack. So, I will put that up for folks to see because I think that is something that confused me at first. So, hopefully, that'll help. And then for our folks that are doing this without pairing it with anything, I know that some of the coaches put together some dosing schedules there as well to help. So hopefully that will help folks get started and really engage with this new protocol. Cool.
Cool. Yeah. And any questions or concerns or additional information, reach out to the team and I'm always available as well.
Yep. And I know we'll have lots of questions, so that'll be exciting. I feel like our patients
Good.
push us to think about things that we may not have even considered. So,
Absolutely. And that's how we learn as well.
all right. Thank you, Dr. Cohen, for taking the time today. Appreciate
Oh,
you,
my,
all the
oh,
work
I'm
you
happy to do it. Yeah, I'm excited and see how we can continue to optimize these
do.
protocols because that's the power of paying attention. You can refine and you start at a particular place and then you adjust.